So as we both know, a year ago, or a little over a year ago, when Helldivers first came out, there was a controversy around it that effectively the Sony network had decided that they were going to make it so that you had to be able to sign in to PSN in order to play the game. Unfortunately, and apparently that was the intention from the beginning. They always wanted it to be a requirement to be in the PSN network, but because of server issues, because of server overload issues, they weren't able to actually actualize that, so they made it able to for everyone to play, and then retroactively said you have to sign into a PSN network. What this ended up doing was it created a situation where a lot of people who had bought the game could no longer play the game because they couldn't sign into a PSN network. They very quickly retracted that, but continued to disallow sales of the game to countries that would not be able to sign into a PSN network. Because essentially the lack of PSN network was a region-locked thing. This caused a lot of review bombing from on the Steam for Helldivers, caused a lot of hate to be labeled at Arrowhead Studios, who created Helldivers, until they came out and said, hey, this wasn't our decision. And Sony backtracked on it, but it kind of indicated that this would be the plan in the future. From my understanding, the reason why Sony did this was effectively kind of the same reason a lot of games have. You have to sign into their network in order to play the game. One, it's just about forcing you to sign into their network, forcing you to show some level of loyalty to them, likely in hopes that you're going to buy more of their games because you're going to see more of their stuff advertised. They have your information now, so they can sell your information, etc., etc. But also, from some of the stuff I saw, it was about their ability to troubleshoot, and it was about their ability to handle player complaints. If players came in with complaints about another player, it was easier for them to action those complaints because you were signed into their network. They had a little bit more control over it. It would be easier for them to ban troublesome players or cheaters, a bunch of stuff like that. Ultimately, it was a bad move, especially because they ended up saying, hey, all you people that already bought this game, you can go f*** yourselves, is what it felt like, because they were screwing over all those people. And recently, it has come out, it was about, like, 2 weeks ago, I think the article came out that was talking about how Arrowhead Studios said that their next game will be 100% self-published. They will not be going through Sony in the future at all. And this brought up the conversation of whether or not Arrowhead is attempting to cut their ties with Sony. From what they have said, no, they're not cutting their ties with Sony. They are just now in a financially well-off state because of the release of Helldivers 2 that they can make their own game, publish their own game. They don't need the support, and they don't have to worry about what some other company is going to be telling them to do, because ultimately Sony owns the IP for Helldivers. Sony was the one that published it. Sony had almost all the control over it. But there we are. What are your thoughts on this whole issue, Mammoth?
The biggest issue was the fact that people that had already bought the game couldn't play it, and there was... Mm-hmm. I don't even know if Steam were doing refunds. I don't know about other platforms because I don't use console. I only use Steam. But apparently people were struggling to get refunds, and that was a whole ordeal. I don't know if that was fixed or not afterwards. Don't know.
Yes,
but
yeah,
it was the whole...
I just Googled it. Steam did immediately start issuing refunds because of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough then. The fact that they never really commented on... I don't think they commented on the fact you have to use PSN to get in. They revoked that, said, cool, we'll take it off. I don't think they ever commented on the fact that they still banned like 130 odd regions or whatever it was. Which does coincide with the PSN network regions that's available on that. But I don't think they ever commented on it.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing anything where Sony specifically commented on that. It was more so people saying, oh, looking at the list of places where people could buy it and couldn't buy it, mm-hmm. and the list of places where people could have a PSN network account and places where they couldn't, and realizing that they were exactly the same, with like the exception of Japan, but that was because there was a different version of it that was released to Japan for localization reasons.
I think same for China because they have to get rid of all the skulls and the blood. And all that kind of stuff.
I mean, some countries just get different versions of games and products because of weird localization rules and bullshit like that. to me, the biggest problem was the fact that they theoretically knew what they were going to do. They knew what they were going to do, and they still allowed those countries to buy anyways, because they said, or at least they claimed, maybe this wasn't the case, and they decided this after the fact, but they claimed that they were always going to put it behind the PSN network, and the reason they didn't do it at start was because they did not anticipate how popular the game was going to be, so they did not have the server capacity for it. So they needed to make concessions in order to get people on and playing. And there was even a moment where the CEO of Arrowhead straight up published, he put out, hey, I recognize there's a lot of server issues going on right now. We're working to fix it, but we haven't fixed it yet. You don't have to buy the game right now. He straight up did the good guy Greg thing and said, hey, we haven't solved this yet. Don't buy the game until we solve it, because it's not fair for you to buy a game and not be able to play it. And Sony reportedly, like within minutes of him publishing that, reached out to them and said, what the f*** are you doing? Like, you can't tell them not to buy the game. So they're kind of being the more, like, corporate one, which makes sense. Sony's a big company. Arrowhead is a small indie studio, effectively.
There was a lot of random shit going on in the Discord as well when everything was going on. And, like, mods in their Discord who were Arrowhead employees. They weren't just random people that decided to mod their Discord.
Yeah.
Were, like, literally saying, like, basically pointing the finger at Sony the whole time. So it wasn't communicated properly to Arrowhead clearly, because otherwise...
Yeah. I mean,
they would have had way better idea of how to deal with it.
Yeah, Arrowhead was not, from my understanding, from all the reporting that I saw, Arrowhead was not informed that this was a thing that was happening. They did not know that this was going to happen until all of a sudden it happened, and now they're the ones dealing with all the hate that is being leveled at them, because at first, nobody knew. At first, I was, like, super anti, like, Arrowhead and Helldivers and stuff, because I was like, what the f***? Are you serious? Even though it was like a Sony network thing, I would have assumed that they would have been aware of that and should have made that clear in the process. But it seems like they weren't. They were not made aware of it at all. And they tried to do everything they could to stop it, to the point of even there was that controversy around there for a while of Sony got mad at them because they the CEO or CCO or someone from Arrowhead straight up said, hey, if you're in one of these countries, you're going to need to set your Steam location to a country that is allowed to have a PSN network in order to buy this game, and set your, like, all your data to there if you're going to want to play and buy this game. I can see Sony kind of being mad at that too. One, because it's like, okay, you shouldn't have said that without talking to us, but Sony, you shouldn't have done this without talking to them. But also because if they did update it to requiring a PSN network, which is something it seems like they were still angling to do, and Arrowhead went ahead and said, hey, do this and you'll still be able to buy the game, and then they updated it to the PSN network, those people would not be able to play the game. But
there was the thing about saying a VPN to another country and do all that kind of stuff for well, but that had some legal liability, I think, to it as well.
Yeah, it broke Sony TOS. It broke Sony terms of service.
So they could just straight up terminate your account if you did that. And everything.
I feel like what it might have been was Arrowhead, one, wanting people to be able to play their game. Two, it could have been Arrowhead trying to strong arm. I cannot find the place this is supposed to go. It could have been Arrowhead trying to strong-arm Sony into not doing the PSN thing, because the more people that buy the game and all of a sudden have it ripped away from them, the worse press it is for Sony, even if they're legally in the right. Like, look at what Nintendo's doing right now. There's the debate about whether or not the Nintendo patents are legal, but since they currently hold them, what Nintendo is doing is legal, but it's not a good look for them. So there's that.
Obviously, not get too much in it in this, but there's a similar thing going on right now with the Dark and Darker game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that.
Oh, I love Dark and Darker, yeah. I don't know what the drama is.
Well, the drama is that the game that's currently free isn't the game that they actually want to... Sorry, the game when it's finished isn't going to be free, and that apparently was hidden to the fact or wasn't immediately obvious. So people who have put all the hours into the current version of Dark and Darker, which is free to play, isn't going to be the case. That's going to just be the demo, and then they're going to charge however much for the full game. I've never played it, so I wasn't sure on how that worked, but apparently the way they did it was really shady, and it got review bombed to high shit.
I don't know. I don't know the full story there. I know I played Dark and Darker. I know Dark and Darker is free to play, but you can pay for the paid version if you want to have extra, like characters and shit like that. And part of it does come down to communication, because yeah, if you're gonna tell me that I'm gonna need to pay for a version of the game in order to keep it all up, and all the effort that I put in is going to be deleted if I don't pay for it, I can see that being upsetting, but you got a free game. You got a free, pretty good, pretty fun game, and there is a part of, like, the internet gamer culture and just internet culture in general where I feel like a lot of people just feel entitled to shit. Like, they see a game's going to cost $40, $50, $60, and they're like, oh my god, that's bullshit, I'm just going to pirate it. It's like, that is a lot of man-hours. That is a lot of man-hours, a lot of time, a lot of money going into the servers, hosting the servers, maintaining the servers, the crew that's paying everyone, that's every single part of developing the game. They need to get their payback. If you don't like the cost of the game, don't buy the fucking game, don't play the game. But I can kind of understand that too, just in the level of like, hey, if they said outright that it's always going to be free, there's always going to be the free version of the game, and then all of a sudden it's only free while it's in demo, but once it's out of demo, it's no longer going to be free. That is an upsetting thing. That is a bad move. But also at a certain point, they put countless hours into this game. They need to get paid for it.
Yeah.
So I get that.
But again, I don't know the fully ins and outs. It was just something that was kind of similar.
Yeah. But with this Arrowhead thing, it seems like from the article that I read about it, it seems like Arrowhead is still very appreciative of Sony, that they recognize that they would never have been able to make this game if Sony didn't do it, and they even gassed them up a little bit and were like, yeah, no, Sony is incredibly dev oriented and game oriented, and they're very helpful and they're very good about it. So this seemed to have just come down to, at least from what is publicly available, really bad miscommunication internally between Arrowhead and Sony about this issue, and then really bad communication with the players, and then really bad communication with the players after everything was released and after the drama happened, because people thought it was Arrowhead at first. At the very beginning of it, until like they released their statement, people were like, wait, Arrowhead's okay with this? No, they're not.
There's just nothing they can do.
They don't have any control over this. So it seemed like a lot of really bad communication, but by all accounts, Arrowhead is not planning on, like, they're not talking shit about Sony. They're not planning on completely cutting ties with Sony. They have said, the CEO has said that he's open to working with Sony in the future, but their next game is going to be entirely self-published. They have all the money they need for it. They're going to be fine. And I imagine a big part of that is also, like, I imagine they would love to have Sony publishing for them and paying for all the development, if it weren't for the fact that something like this might happen again. So I got to imagine a big part of this decision, even though they haven't directly said it's because of the Sony drama, I imagine a big part of it is because of the Sony drama. And they don't want to directly say that because they don't want to sour relationships.
It's also like there's the sour taste that some people have about Helldivers. That means that the game that they post isn't going to sell as many units just purely because of what Sony have done in the past.
I think it's pretty fair to say that Sony and their actions damaged Arrowhead's reputation and damaged people's conceptions of Arrowhead and of Helldivers, and hurt the game as a whole, because there's a lot of people. I know I dropped it the moment I saw that happen, and I wasn't sure, like, of the entire situation. I was like, nope, I do not agree with this at all. I'm not going to support them in any way. I'm out. And then when I started seeing some more of the information, I was like, okay, I can come back, because one, Sony retracted. And listen, if a company makes a bad decision, makes a faux pas like that, and they're willing to retract it and say, whoops, we fucked up, never mind, I'm not gonna stop playing their shit because they're willing to change. If they hold to it, if they pull a Nintendo and say, no, we're assholes and we're going to keep being assholes, then fuck them, I'm not going to support them. But they retracted, so I started playing Helldivers again. Obviously, we're playing it right now. But it's like almost irrefutable that Sony hurt Arrowhead and hurt Helldivers with those actions.
They hurt their reputation, I think, a lot more because Arrowhead were able to kind of figure it out. Say, look, we'll put the stuff in place.
But I'm willing to bet there's still people that are out there like, man, the Helldivers are assholes because they never saw that extra shit. There's always going to be a percentage of people that don't have the full information.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it's pretty fair to say that even though Arrowhead has not said it, that one of the reasons why they are not going to be working with Sony in the future game and they're going to go self-publishing is because they don't want to risk that happening again. And you know damn well if they allowed Sony to publish their next game, that the sales would plummet out of fear of what happened next, out of fear of this same happening. But yeah, no, just saw that. And there's the thing too is if they had released the game from the beginning and said, listen, we need you to have a PSN network, so if you're not in one of these countries that has a PSN network, you can't buy the game, I would have been perfectly fine with that. That is their business decision to make. They want to have control over the servers. They want to have control over the complaint system. They want to be able to deal with hackers. They want to do whatever capitalist shit they're doing to push more people to buy more Sony products. That's their call. That's their right. Go right ahead. But it's the fact that they did it after the fact and they kind of said F you to the people that were already in possession of the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I think they are kind of the bad guys in this.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Like, it was the fact that when the game first released, at least on Steam, right?
Mm-hmm.
They apparently, I can't remember, and like a lot of people, they probably didn't pay too much attention. When you first booted the game up, it said on the front screen only once that eventually you'll need a PSN account. It said that, but the fact that they so it probably was planned to always be that way. Mm-hmm. But then why allow the sale of the game in countries which don't have access to it in the first place if you're going to change that at a later date? Because if you planned on having it on release, it just, I don't know, it just that whole part is the Sony part.
There's so many areas where things went wrong. And I wonder how much of it was just raw miscommunication, how much of it was shady practices, and how much of it was they just didn't think about it. Like, drop the receipts of your planning meetings and shit to see, like, is this just you know what? We did not actually think about this. We have a blank form that we put out and a SOP that we follow every time we release a game, and we forgot to change this because of what we're planning on doing? Or was it like, hey, we can make these sales? Was it some shady corporate exec saying we can make these sales for a few months and then activate this?
Yeah.
Or was it just a miscommunication of someone didn't speak to someone, so stuff got uploaded wrong, stuff got published wrong, things went wrong? And it's one of those cases they needed to make more of a statement. I had trouble finding any amount of information, and most of the information I found is just speculation, but any amount of information coming directly from Sony where they explained why they did this. Release a statement.
Yeah, I don't think they ever did.
Release a statement to say why you did this, and if it was a fuck up, say that. Listen, guys, we made a bad move. We're sorry. I think a lot of people would be responsive to that. A lot of at least mature people, which is a small portion of the gaming industry, would be very responsive to they admit they made a mistake. They gave us the reasons why they did it, and they said, sorry, we won't do it again. Or if we do it again, we will be more clear about our plans. So it was just a series of bad communication choices, just bad. Just a lot of people did bad, and I want to know why the bad happened, because that would help clarify the issue a bit more. If you knew their intentions, or at least what they were willing to publicly say their intentions were about it. Arrowhead was
just
up front the whole time.
Yeah, it is just showing that when you raise your hands and say, we f***ed up, we're going to fix it, and then fix it, that the games still perform well.
Yeah.
Like, the two biggest games I can think of that come to mind when you think about that is No Man's Sky, one of my favorite space games in general, and then Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Two games that were fucking awful at launch. The devs came out and said, we up, we'll fix it. And what did they do?
They fixed
Fucking
it.
fixed it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very bad about if a game is functionally bad. It's hard for me to drop it and get back into it. So I couldn't get back into No Man's Sky. It was hard for me to get back into Destiny. Like, I played a lot of Destiny when it first came out, but it was an unfinished game. So I had a hard time getting back into that. Even with the whoopsies, we messed up, we'll fix it kind of stuff going on. But for a lot of people, that's all they need to hear. Because if you don't say that, then everyone's just waiting for you to drop the ball again, or everyone's waiting for you to pull some shady thing again, because you've never at least said that you're not going to. And you would think that even if you're lying, you would make some sort of statement that says, whoopsie daisies, that was not our intention.
Yeah.
And they're not even going that far, so like it's hurting the game. And the sad thing is, it hurt Arrowhead in the process. It hurt the people that were not responsible for those bad decisions in the process.
Yeah. I think now that it's kind of mostly settled, and you know the player base is what it is now. Like, there's nothing else coming through. I think Arrowhead have done a way better job at repairing their reputation as to what Sony has, because I think I don't know off the top of my head what they are, but I swear I remember Sony making some other bullshit decisions over the past few months.
I'm willing to bet they have, and that's something we could dive into. We can do a whole... Listen, we've been going on a whole tirade against Nintendo. We can do one against Sony if there's stuff there.
Exactly.
But yeah, and you mentioned it earlier. You mentioned it before we got on recording. That like Sony owns the Helldivers IP, which means they could very well, if Arrowhead says, hey, we don't want to work with you on this again, they could very well end up handing off the IP to a different studio that doesn't understand the game as well, or doesn't understand what the players want as well, or is just solely into the monetization. It can become like an EA thing or Ubisoft, where like just everything's about monetization and 1,000 microtransactions and shit. Because they hand it off to someone that doesn't have the love of the game. Arrowhead clearly loves the game and loves what they're doing with the game, so they're not going to damage it. But since Sony owns the IP, if Arrowhead decides not to work with Sony in the future because of this, it can kill the future of like a Helldivers 3. Or I don't know what their contract is with Helldivers 2, but they might end up, if they don't have like a contract that allows them to stay in charge of Helldivers 2, they could end up handing over Helldivers 2 to a different studio, so all the updates end up coming through a studio that cares more about monetization than they do about gameplay, and it's kind of shitty that can happen. I feel like the integrity move on Sony's part would be to say, listen, we fucked up, we're going to keep monetizing this, but we're handing over the IP to Arrowhead so that they can move forward with this franchise the way they seem fit. Never going to happen.
Nope.
But I feel like that would be like the integrity move.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of sums up the thoughts on it a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So gonna end there. I produce other content, so you should totally like and subscribe. I did want to point out that I try to be very good about replying to comments within the first hour or two of a video getting released. But with some of these videos, I stop replying to comments after a while because there's just hundreds of them and I don't have the time. So if you like and subscribe and turn on notifications and see the videos right when they come out and leave comments right away, then I'm more likely to reply to a comment. So you should do that. And then check out my other stuff over here. You can check out Mammoth's channels and social media stuff is going to be in the description. So yeah, bye.